Sokoze makhosi namakhulu, makhosi namahle, makhosi ububesi lokhuluma nani kulolu suku namhlanje siphinde sinamukele phakathi kwendawo. Today we will be discussing polygamous marriages in the spiritual context. So there's different dynamics to the subject matter, and there's really two types of polygamous marriages. The first type is that which is ordered by the spiritual realm. That is, it means that it's constructed in the fifth dimension by your angels, ancestors, and spirit guides. And it happens in two different ways. Then the second order is that which is constructed by us here in the second dimension. That is, if a man decides that he wants to enter into a polygamous marriage, that means he wants to have more than one wife, then he will go about doing that. But the second option is a bit tricky nowadays because before, the motive behind it was that there were a lot more women than men, and in society it was shunned upon to have a woman be seen as not being involved with or not having a husband and having to fend for herself in life. Now, if you go back to the context of the circumstances that our forefathers and foremothers were living under, which was due to economic circumstances and social circumstances which influenced the lifestyle that they might have had to have led at the time. So it would only have made sense that families would come together to support their livelihood, whether it was through subsistence farming or, if they were lucky enough, commercial farming, or if it was through other forms of sustaining life, for example, bartering or trading, crafts, etc., then that is what they would have entered into, right? So let's go back to the first option. That is the one that is ordered in the fifth dimension by your angels, ancestors, and spirit guides. So basically, in order for a lineage, ancestral lineage, to form, there needs to be the meeting of two people where two people are brought together in the union of marriage. So, this union, in effect, is really the involvement of four different families coming together to meet to form this ancestral lineage, which is supposed to manifest in terms of multiplying abundance and wealth and prosperity. Abundance and wealth and prosperity is not limited only to financial prosperity or financial um, wealth. It's also meant to be wealth in terms of children, wealth in terms of talents, wealth in terms of skills, wealth in terms of knowledge, wealth in terms of wisdom, wealth in terms of spiritual enlightenment, and etc. So, we'll discuss two scenarios. The first scenario is a man has a great grandfather or grandfather who once had a polygamous marriage. And this man has come back into this realm with this grandfather who will then later on in his life, or maybe even earlier on in his life, he will be informed that his great grandfather or grandfather requires for him to enter into a polygamous marriage to fulfill certain spiritual requests that need to be aligned in order for the further prosperity or growth of that ancestral lineage. So he will then be guided by this particular person and perhaps even other angels, ancestors, and spirit guides that influence his life to be able to select or to find the partner. So we say that the universe conspires to align you with the person that you're supposed to be with. Because remember, this type of union has already manifested itself in the fifth dimension. So you, as a man, will be going about living your best life and you'll be aligned, such that you meet with this particular person who will then be deemed as Ndlonkulu, which is the first wife, or Umamkulu. And then she will be basically the first wife, and then the other wives will then succumb to whatever rules and standards that she sets. Now, this doesn't mean that she has more power per se, more than the other wives, but she is looked upon or looked up to as the reference for a lot of the decisions that are made in this family. And because she is a woman, she leaves everything that she has been taught from her own family when she comes to join this new family. And she will be taught about the ways in which she is expected to conduct herself in this new family and how things are meant to be handled in this new family. So it's also a challenge for her because right after doing that, then she will then have a sister wife, second wife of the husband, or sister wives if there's more than one sister wife. Could be two wives, could be three wives, could be four wives, could be five wives after the first wife, depending on what the requirement is in terms of spirit. Also, because this is a union which is ordered by the spiritual realm, it'll be such that these people who are brought or who come into this union are pre-aligned spiritually, so for the success of this marriage. So there will be very minimal squabbling and fighting and competing and comparing and all of those things. They are very minimal. The reason is because the motive behind the union is spiritual. And therefore, when these people come together, all of their angels, ancestors, and spirit guides individually have influenced their lives such that these people are now ready and willing and prepared to enter into this union, knowing full and well what it is that they're getting themselves into and doing so willingly. So these people will be happy in this type of a union. There will be very little reason for them to not be happy because the primary fulfillment of the union is spiritual. And this is the first type of polygamous, uh, or first type of a polygamous marriage there is that which is conducted by spirit. Now, this can also be the case for a woman, where a woman might have a male uh, spirit guide, angel, or ancestor, for example, her grandfather or her great grandfather, will require her to take a wife on his behalf. So, this is how some same sex marriages take place. But this is not limited to that because the very same woman can also have a female angel ancestor or spirit guide or a grandmother who will also require her to take a husband. That means this in the same person, there's a requirement for her to take a wife, and then there's also a requirement for her to be a wife. In other words, for her to have a husband. And as rare as this is, it's something that happens. And these are things that people need to be aware of and should learn from. Of course, there's many questions might one have, which one might have, sorry, um, in terms of how this type of a union works, but because it's spiritually ordained and spiritually orchestrated, then it will happen easily because all of the people involved are spiritually aligned to fulfill whatever request that needs to be fulfilled spiritually, whatever the agreement is, contract or soul contract that they have been committed to in the spiritual realm. Now, this is not to say that in these types of unions that the process of everything will be easy. There will be some challenges, but the challenges are quite minimal to the benefits in this type of a union. And these things happen so that there's healing for all of those involved. Now, this is not an easy phenomenon to wrap your head around, but it is important to be open minded and to be aware that such relationships do exist in the world. And if you are not aware of the spiritual influences behind such relationships, it'll be easy for you to place judgment because you are not informed. And sometimes being informed is not enough because you might not be in agreement. But it's all relative. And whether you're informed or whether you agree or not is also irrelevant because the people involved in such a union will fulfill what that which is required of them and will do so happily. And that's really the bottom line of the matter, is that people must flourish and must engage in expressions of love in a way that fulfills everybody, in a way that promotes peace, in a way that promotes prosperity and abundance for all of the people involved. And this is how we get to zoom in on the ancestral strengths and ancestral weaknesses. This is precisely why ancestral strengths have been constructed or exist. This is also precisely why ancestral weaknesses have been constructed and exist. Most of the time, these unions, if not all the time, are orchestrated to address ancestral weaknesses for many different reasons. Now, the other option is that where a wealthy man has the option of taking more than one wife under his wing, and this has been a culture and continues to be a culture that is practiced even in this day and age. But the condition of practicing this culture was that this man must be in a position to be able to provide for his family efficiently and equally across each of his wives. And this is important because if this can't be fulfilled, then it creates havoc in the household because there's competition and there's jealousy and there's he said and she did this and she didn't do that and he did this and he didn't do that, and so on and so forth. And that's why there's no reward. There is no spiritual reward, there is no physical reward. And in the next episode, we'll be discussing why these types of marriages fail. Togozani.
Guti lava 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 kuye wakanyete. Guti lava 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 wakazimulu musomhlope ngasibona nami ngifanele ukungena ku. Lepsu